The Great Pyramid of Giza holds a secret that rewrites our entire understanding of ancient history. For centuries, we've been told it was simply a grand tomb for a pharaoh. But what if that explanation barely scratches the surface of its true purpose? This structure may be the world's most sophisticated stone book, its very dimensions encoding advanced mathematical constants and precise astronomical data. By the end of this journey, you will see this ancient wonder not as a pile of rocks, but as a complex calculator built with an intelligence we are only beginning to comprehend. We will uncover how its shape captures the number pi, how its placement mirrors the Earth itself, and why its interior chambers resonate with a hidden harmony. What does it truly mean to stand before a mystery 4,500 years old? Its original form reveals the first layer of this ancient code. The Great Pyramid originally stood at 481 feet tall, a colossal figure even by today's standards. Its base formed a nearly perfect square, with each side measuring around 756 feet. But the real magic lies in the relationship between these numbers. If you take the pyramid's base perimeter and divide it by twice its original height, you get a value startlingly close to the mathematical constant pi, approximately 3.1416. This is not a random coincidence. It is a deliberate architectural choice, a mathematical signature baked into the very skeleton of the structure. Furthermore, the pyramid's four sides are aligned with the four cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, with an accuracy that baffles modern surveyors. The deviation is less than 1/15 of a single degree. To achieve such precision, the builders would have needed an understanding of astronomy and geometry that we simply did not credit them with. They were not just stacking stones, they were positioning a multi-million-ton monument with the care of a watchmaker, using blocks that often weighed more than 2 tons each, yet were fitted together with seams thinner than a credit card. This is not the kind of craftsmanship you associate with a simple tomb. This is the work of master engineers who are encoding something far more profound into the Earth itself. This mathematical signature, the number pi, is hiding in plain sight. To see it, you must look at the pyramid's proportions. Take the distance around its base, the perimeter. Now take twice the pyramid's original height. If you divide that perimeter by twice the height, the result is not a random number. It is approximately 3.1416, a figure that comes remarkably close to the mathematical constant pi, which we know as 3.14159, and so on. The ancient builders, using nothing but simple tools and profound insight, seemingly encoded one of the most important numbers in the universe into the very shape of their creation. This discovery ignites a fierce debate that still rages today. Was this a deliberate act of genius, or is it all just an incredible coincidence? Skeptics argue that if you build a structure with a certain slope, the pi relationship emerges naturally, almost by accident. They suggest the builders were simply aiming for a specific angle, and the appearance of pi was a mathematical byproduct, but this explanation feels incomplete. The precision is too great. To align a structure of this scale with such a fundamental constant suggests a level of intent that transcends mere tomb building. It implies the architects possessed a sophisticated understanding of geometry and the ratios that govern our world. They were not just constructing a monument, they were embedding a permanent record of advanced knowledge, a testament written in stone for future generations to decipher. The presence of pi challenges the very timeline of human discovery, forcing us to ask who were these people and what were they truly trying to communicate across the millennia. But the pyramid's mathematical secrets do not end with pi. Another fundamental constant of the universe appears to be woven into its very fabric, the golden ratio. This special number, approximately 1.618, is often symbolized by the Greek letter phi. You can find this ratio everywhere you look in nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. It is a proportion that the human eye inherently finds beautiful, and it appears in countless masterpieces of art and architecture throughout history. The Great Pyramid, it seems, is no exception. If you take the pyramid's apothem, which is the slant height running from the center of its base all the way up to the apex, and divide it by half the length of the base, the resulting number is remarkably close to phi. This is not a loose approximation. It is a precise geometric relationship deliberately built into the angles and dimensions. The presence of the golden ratio elevates the pyramid from a mere mathematical curiosity to a philosophical statement. It suggests the builders were not just engineers, but also artists and natural philosophers. They were encoding the very principles of harmony and growth found in the natural world. They were creating a microcosm, a model of the universe's beautiful order in stone. Why would the architects of a tomb care about such things? The answer seems clear. They were building something far grander than a final resting place. They were constructing a permanent monument to cosmic knowledge, a silent teacher for ages to come. Perhaps the most breathtaking connection lies not just in mathematics, but in the very globe we stand on. The Great Pyramid appears to be a perfect scale model of the Earth's northern hemisphere. Think about that for a moment. A single structure built on a specific patch of desert somehow encodes the dimensions of our entire planet. This connection hinges on two key measurements and one profoundly important number. First, consider the pyramid's original height. If you take that height of 481 feet and multiply it by 43,200, you arrive at a figure remarkably close to the Earth's polar radius. The math is staggering in its simplicity and its implication. This number, 43,200, is not random. It is a key figure in the phenomenon known as the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble in the Earth's axis that takes 25,920 years to complete a full cycle. Divide that great year by the number of degrees in a circle, 360, and you get 72. Multiply 72 by 600, and you arrive back at the key, 43,200. This number seems to be a fundamental cosmic code deliberately chosen by the pyramid's architects, but the earthly mirror does not end there. The pyramid's base perimeter, when multiplied by that same magical number, 43,200, gives you a value extremely close to the Earth's equatorial circumference. So the height corresponds to the distance from the center of the Earth to the North Pole, and the perimeter corresponds to the distance around the Earth's waistline. The chances of both these relationships occurring by accident in the same structure are astronomically small. This was not a coincidence. It was a deliberate act of global cartography in stone. The builders were not just creating a local monument. They were constructing a permanent physical representation of the world, a 1 to 43,200 scale model of our planet's northern half, left in the sand for us to find. Why would a civilization we consider ancient need to encode the precise dimensions of the Earth, and how could they possibly have known them? This brings us to one of the most astonishing and fiercely debated claims of all. The Great Pyramid's very location on the planet seems to hold a secret number, a value that defines the fabric of the universe. The pyramid's latitude is 29.9792458 degrees north. Now write that number down without the decimal point. You get 299,792,458. This is the exact speed of light in a vacuum, measured in meters per second. The probability of this specific alignment occurring randomly at the site of the world's most enigmatic structure is for many too minute to be a simple fluke. It feels like a signature, a deliberate marker left by the architects. Proponents of this idea argue it is the ultimate proof of advanced knowledge, a clear signal that the builders possessed an understanding of physics that would not be formally discovered for thousands of years. They see it as the final, undeniable piece of a grand puzzle, connecting the pyramid's earthly dimensions to a fundamental constant of the cosmos. Mainstream archaeology, however, views this correlation with deep skepticism. Critics are quick to point out that the meter itself is a modern unit of measurement, established in the late 18th century. They argue that the ancient Egyptians used cubits, not meters, making the connection anachronistic, a classic case of seeing patterns where none were intended. They suggest that if you look at enough numbers associated with any large, old structure, you will eventually find a seemingly meaningful match purely by chance. Yet, the sheer elegance of this particular match, linking the pyramid's position to the universal speed limit, is profoundly difficult to dismiss entirely. It forces us to confront a difficult question. Is this a miraculous coincidence, a product of our own pattern-seeking minds, or is it the remnant of a lost science, a way of encoding knowledge that transcends our conventional understanding of history? The coordinates remain, silently challenging us from the desert, a numerical whisper across time. Deep within the pyramid's heart lies a room that deepens the mathematical mystery. The king's chamber is built from massive blocks of red granite, and its floor forms a perfect rectangle. The length of this room is exactly twice its width. This 2-to-1 ratio is the first clue that we are looking at another deliberate geometric code. If you draw a line diagonally across this floor from one corner to the other, you create two identical right-angled triangles. And here is where the mystery becomes truly profound. The sides of these triangles are in the precise ratio of 3, 4, and 5. This is what is known as a Pythagorean triple. A Pythagorean triangle is simply a right-angled triangle where the lengths of all three sides are whole numbers. The most famous example is the 3-4-5 triangle, where the square of the 3 side plus the square of the 4 side equals the square of the 5 side. This relationship, known as the Pythagorean theorem, is the foundation of so much geometry and architecture. The problem and the true enigma is one of time. The Greek philosopher Pythagoras, from whom this theorem gets its name, lived around 2,500 years ago. The Great Pyramid, and this specific chamber within it, was constructed over 4,500 years ago. This means the builders of the pyramid were using this advanced mathematical principle more than 2,000 years before Pythagoras was even born. This is not a matter of finding a number that looks close to pi or phi in the proportions. This is the application of a specific, complex geometric rule. To incorporate a 3-4-5 triangle so perfectly into the chamber's core dimensions required a working knowledge of this theorem. It was not a lucky guess, it was precise, intentional engineering. So how did an ancient civilization possess this knowledge millennia ahead of its supposed discovery? The king's chamber stands as a silent, granite challenge to our entire historical timeline, forcing us to reconsider where knowledge truly began. The granite coffer in the king's chamber presents a riddle that defies simple explanation. This massive box, carved from a single block of incredibly hard stone, is far more than an empty sarcophagus. Its dimensions appear to hold another layer of coded information. Researchers have found that the ratio between its external and internal volumes corresponds to a significant astronomical cycle. The outside volume relates to the inside volume in a proportion that mirrors the precession of the equinoxes, that vast 25,920-year wobble in the Earth's axis. This is not a rough estimate. The coffer's precise capacity seems to be a deliberate physical representation of this grand cosmic clock, a unit of time measured in stone. But the mystery only deepens when you consider its construction. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth, rating a 7 on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. To hollow out this block with such perfect, sharp internal corners and smoothly polished surfaces would be a monumental challenge even with today's powered diamond-tipped tools. The ancient craftsmen, however, had only stone hammers and copper chisels at their disposal, tools that are fundamentally too soft to effectively work granite. So how did they achieve this feat? The precision of the coffer's corners is so exact that it suggests the use of a technology we have not yet identified, perhaps a lost method of stone cutting that allowed them to shape solid rock as if it were soft clay. This box, therefore, is a dual mystery. It is a potential repository of astronomical data, and at the same time, a stunning artifact of manufacturing prowess that quietly questions our entire narrative of technological progress. Why go to such impossible lengths for a container that was supposedly meant to be sealed away in a dark chamber forever? The coffer stands as a silent, polished testament to a skill and a knowledge that we still cannot fully replicate or understand. The passages winding through the pyramid's core are not mere corridors. They are precision-engineered shafts aimed directly at the heavens. The descending passage begins its long journey down from the original northern entrance, plunging into the bedrock at a precise angle of 26 degrees and 31 minutes. This was no random slope. At the time the pyramid was built, this passage pointed like a laser beam directly at the pole star of that era, a star called Thuban or Alpha Draconis. In the ancient night sky, Thuban was the unmoving pivot around which the entire cosmos appeared to turn. For a civilization that lived by the stars, aligning their greatest monument with this celestial anchor was an act of profound symbolic and practical importance. It physically connected the structure to the still point of the universe, grounding it in cosmic order, but the celestial alignment does not end there. From the base of the Grand Gallery, another corridor begins its ascent. The ascending passage rises at the exact same angle as the descending one, 26 degrees and 31 minutes, but it points upward. This creates a perfect symmetry, a mirror image within the stone. Why would the builders go to such extraordinary lengths to create this precise duality? The answer may lie in the stars and in the passage of time. Some researchers propose these passages were not just symbolic, they functioned as long-range telescopes. On specific nights of the year, starlight from crucial constellations would have streamed unimpeded down these smooth, polished limestone shafts, perhaps illuminating a specific spot in a chamber or marking a significant date. This would transform the pyramid from a static monument into a dynamic calendar, a stone computer tracking the seasons, the years, and the great cyclical wobble of the Earth's axis. Imagine the ceremony, the power of witnessing a beam of pure starlight from a star that no longer holds the pole position, traveling a path set in stone thousands of years ago to signal a moment of cosmic importance. These passages were likely far more than construction necessities. They were carefully calculated sightlines, locking the rhythms of the sky into the very bones of the Earth. This slow, majestic wobble in our planet's axis is known as the precession of the equinoxes. It takes 25,920 years for the Earth's pole to complete one full circle in the sky, a period sometimes called the Great Year. Now consider the base of the Great Pyramid once more. If you calculate the length of its two diagonals and add them together, the resulting sum is not just a random measurement. That total length, when expressed in a specific ancient unit, appears to be a direct representation of this 25,920-year cycle. The pyramid's very footprint seems to be a geodetic clock counting out a celestial rhythm that unfolds over millennia. Why would any civilization build a monument to a timescale so vast that it dwarfs all of recorded human history? The answer may lie in a fundamentally different way of seeing our place in the cosmos. For a culture that measured its existence by the stars, this grand cycle was the ultimate calendar. It governed the slow transition from one astrological age to the next, from the age of Taurus to the age of Aries, and beyond. By encoding this number in stone, the builders were creating a permanent anchor, a fixed point of reference that would outlast empires, languages, and even the memory of their own names. They were sending a message to the future, a testament to their understanding that humanity is part of a much larger celestial order. They built not for a pharaoh's lifetime, but for the lifetime of the Earth itself, ensuring that this profound cosmic knowledge would never be lost, even if the meaning behind the numbers was forgotten for ages. The silent stone of the king's chamber holds an unseen power, one that is heard rather than seen. When you stand inside this granite vault, you notice an immediate change in the quality of sound. Your own voice seems different, clearer, and more present. This is no accident of construction. The entire chamber acts as a massive resonating cavity, and the granite coffer at its center is the key component. Experiments have shown that the coffer itself vibrates at a specific, low frequency when stimulated. If you were to strike it, it would ring with a deep, pure tone. More remarkably, the dimensions of the coffer and the chamber seem designed to amplify this specific frequency, creating a powerful standing wave of sound. In such an environment, the very air would hum with energy, and a person standing within the chamber would feel the vibration resonating through their entire body. This leads to a profound question. Why would the builders go to such incredible lengths to engineer a room for sound? One compelling theory suggests this was not for music, but for something far more advanced: sonic levitation. The concept is that by using the correct resonant frequency, the intense sound waves could, in theory, counteract the force of gravity, making massive objects weightless. Imagine a team of priests or engineers chanting in unison, their voices amplified and focused by the chamber's perfect geometry, until the very air thickens with vibration and the multi-ton coffer begins to shudder, then gently lifts from the floor. This would explain the otherwise impossible task of maneuvering such a massive object into the chamber's confined space. Other interpretations point towards spiritual rituals where these specific frequencies were used to alter human consciousness, to induce meditative or trance-like states for communication with the divine. The chamber becomes a technological and spiritual instrument, a machine built not from moving parts but from harmonic ratios and vibrating stone. It stands as a testament to a forgotten science, one that understood the invisible architecture of sound and its power to shape both matter and mind. To understand the pyramid's code, we must first speak its language of measurement. The builders did not use our modern inches or meters. They worked with their own sacred units, and the most famous of these is the royal cubit. A cubit was the length from a man's elbow to the tip of his middle finger, roughly 20.62 inches, but the royal cubit used in the Great Pyramid was not an arbitrary length. It appears to have been a standardized unit derived from the Earth itself. If you take the polar radius of the Earth, the distance from the center to the North Pole, and divide it by 25 million, you get a length strikingly close to 1 royal cubit. This suggests the unit was not just a convenient rule for builders, but a geodetic standard, a tiny piece of the planet's dimensions frozen into a workable measure. When you apply this royal cubit to the pyramid's core dimensions, something remarkable happens. The numbers become whole. The base perimeter was designed to be exactly 1,760 cubits, and the original height was 280 cubits. These are not messy, fractional numbers. They are clean, round figures, confirming that the cubit was the intended scale for the entire architectural plan. Then there is the more controversial pyramid inch. Proposed by 19th century scholars, this unit is said to be 1/500 millionth of the Earth's polar diameter, making it just a tiny bit longer than our modern inch. When this pyramid inch is applied, the pyramid's measurements seem to align even more perfectly with the Earth's circumference and its orbital dynamics. For instance, the length of the king's chamber's inner sarcophagus, measured in pyramid inches, corresponds to a specific fraction of the Earth's polar diameter. The debate surrounding these units is intense. Mainstream archaeology accepts the royal cubit as a real, historical unit of measure, evidenced by many surviving cubit rods. However, they view its connection to the Earth's dimensions as speculative, a beautiful coincidence rather than a proven intent. the pyramid inch is treated with even greater skepticism, often dismissed as a later invention, a case of forcing modern data onto an ancient structure to make the numbers fit a predetermined theory. Yet the sheer elegance of the system is hard to ignore. Why would a civilization create a building where every major dimension is a perfect, round number in their own sacred unit, and then have that unit itself be a precise fraction of the planet? It points toward a unified vision, a single grand design where the unit of measure, the building, and the world were all expressions of the same cosmic mathematics. This was not mere construction, it was the art of weaving the fabric of reality into stone. High above the desert floor, the Great Pyramid is crowned by a flat, truncated summit. It is missing its final piece, the capstone that should complete its perfect form. This absence is one of the structure's most visible and debated mysteries. Was the pyramid ever truly finished? Some Egyptologists argue that construction was simply halted, leaving the final apex block unplaced. Yet the precision found everywhere else in the monument makes this seem unlikely. Why would the master builders, who obsessed over every mathematical detail, leave their ultimate creation incomplete? Another theory suggests the capstone was not ordinary stone, but was forged from a gleaming, precious material. Ancient texts and local legends speak of a pinnacle covered in gold or a shimmering alloy called electrum. Such a brilliant apex would have acted as a final, dazzling beacon, catching the first and last light of the sun each day, visible for miles across the flat desert. If it existed, a capstone of such immense value would have been a prime target for looters across the centuries, easily pried loose and melted down, its material lost to history. But a third, more philosophical idea proposes that the missing capstone is itself a message. In this view, its absence is intentional, a profound symbol of unfinished creation. The pyramid represents the earthly journey, a path of knowledge and ascension that is never truly complete. The missing apex signifies that the ultimate goal, whether spiritual enlightenment or a higher state of being, always lies just beyond our physical grasp and eternal aspiration. It is a silent reminder that the pursuit of perfection is the work itself, not the final stone. So, does the empty summit represent a historical crime, an architectural oversight, or a deliberate and sophisticated statement carved into the sky? The answer remains suspended in the air, as elusive as the missing piece itself. The desert plateau itself becomes a star chart when viewed from above. Robert Bovell's Orion correlation theory presents one of the most compelling and controversial ideas in modern Egyptology. He proposed that the three Great Pyramids of Giza are not placed randomly, but are a precise terrestrial map of the three bright stars that form Orion's belt. According to this theory, the arrangement of the pyramids of Menkora, Khafre, and Khufu mirrors the celestial arrangement of the stars Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintoka. The correlation is not just a rough similarity. The relative brightness of the three belt stars is reflected in the sizes of the three pyramids, and the distinctive slight bend in the line of the stars is perfectly replicated by the slight bend in the alignment of the pyramids. This was not a casual homage. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the constellation of Orion was directly associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife, resurrection, and rebirth. The Milky Way was seen as their celestial Nile River, placing the pharaoh's eternal resting place as a mirror of Osiris' realm in the sky was the ultimate spiritual act, a way of ensuring the king's soul would ascend and join the cosmic cycle of death and renewal. The evidence, however, is not without its challenges. The third and smallest pyramid, the Pyramid of Menkora, is slightly offset from the perfect line formed by the two larger ones, just as the third star in Orion's belt is slightly offset. Proponents see this as conclusive proof of intentional design, yet critics point to a significant issue, the concept of precession. The stars in Orion's belt slowly drift over millennia due to the Earth's wobble. Bovell argued that the pyramids match the belt's configuration not from today, but from 10,500 years before their traditional construction date, around 10,500 BCE. This radical shift in timeline is a major point of contention for mainstream archaeologists, who see no physical evidence for such an advanced civilization at that early date. They argue the alignment could be a remarkable coincidence, or that the pyramids were aligned to other, more contemporary celestial objects. So, are we looking at the work of a lost prehistoric civilization, or is this a pattern we are imposing on the past? The silent, sprawling geometry on the Giza Plateau continues to fuel this debate, an earthly mystery forever looking up to its celestial twin. This concept of a celestial map carved in stone leads us directly to the heart of Egyptian cosmology, a period they called Zep Tepi, the first time. This was not merely a memory of the past, but a foundational myth of a golden age, a pristine epoch when the gods themselves, like Osiris and Isis, walked the earth and established the perfect order of the universe known as Mat. The pyramids, therefore, were far more than tombs or even star charts. They were attempts to reach back through time and physically anchor this chaotic, mortal world to that primordial state of perfection. The very geometry of the Great Pyramid may be a frozen moment of that first time. Some researchers propose that the specific angles of its shafts and the precise ratios of its chambers do not just point to random stars, but encode a specific celestial date. When the stars of Orion's belt were in a certain configuration, one that mirrored the Giza Plateau with absolute perfection, that was the date of Zep Tepi. The pyramid becomes a massive stone clock, its hands frozen at the moment of creation, forever reminding humanity of its divine origins. It was a machine designed not for the physical ascent of a pharaoh's body, but for the spiritual realignment of the entire kingdom. By replicating the celestial order of the gods' first reign on earth, the pyramid was believed to channel that original harmony into the present, ensuring the Nile would flood, the seasons would turn, and Mat would be preserved against the ever-present threat of chaos. This transforms our understanding of its purpose from a grand tomb to a cosmological engine. Its perfect angles and celestial alignments were not just displays of knowledge, they were active instruments of spiritual power. The builders were not just engineers and astronomers, they were timekeepers of the gods, constructing a permanent gateway to a lost age of perfection, a stone prayer for the return of cosmic balance. The pyramid's location holds yet another staggering claim to geographic perfection. It is said to sit at the precise center of the Earth's entire landmass. To understand this, you must picture the world stripped of its oceans, leaving only the continents exposed. Now, draw an imaginary line that crosses the most land possible from north to south. This is the longest land meridian, running from the Arctic reaches of Siberia all the way down to the tip of South Africa. Then, draw another line crossing the most land possible from east to west. This is the longest land parallel, stretching from the coast of Mexico across the Atlantic, over Africa, and onward to the South China Sea. Where do these two epic lines, these central arteries of the planet's dry land, intersect? Their crossing point falls directly on the Giza Plateau, with the Great Pyramid at its heart. The probability of this occurring by pure chance is so infinitesimally small that it defies all logical explanation. It suggests the builders did not choose this site because it was a convenient quarry near the Nile. They selected it because it was the navel of the world, the central point from which all land radiated. This implies a knowledge of global geography that is simply breathtaking. How could an ancient civilization possibly have mapped the entire Earth with such accuracy? They would have needed to traverse and survey continents unknown to them for thousands of years, from the Americas to the far reaches of Asia, all without leaving a single record of these epic voyages in their own history. The alternative, that this is merely a cosmic fluke, feels equally difficult to accept, so we are left with a profound choice. Either we are witnessing the most incredible coincidence in human history, or we are staring at the legacy of a civilization so advanced that they understood the fundamental geography of our planet in a way we are only now rediscovering through satellites and global positioning systems. Another profound mathematical constant appears woven into the pyramid's internal geometry, Euler's number, known simply as E and approximately equal to 2.71828. This irrational number is the foundation of natural logarithms and describes the very nature of exponential growth, from a growing population to the compounding of interest. The evidence for its presence within the pyramid is found not in a single, obvious ratio, but in a subtle and elegant relationship involving the Grand Gallery. This magnificent ascending corridor has a distinctive corbelled roof that creates a powerful, narrowing effect as it rises. If you analyze the precise slope and the changing dimensions of this gallery, a fascinating calculation emerges. The area of a specific vertical cross-section of the Grand Gallery, when related to the pyramid's overall height, produces a value that is remarkably close to the square of Euler's number. This is not a crude approximation. The geometry required to produce this result is complex and deliberate, suggesting the builders were encoding another layer of advanced mathematical understanding. Why would the architects of an ancient monument care about a constant related to growth and natural change? The answer may lie in a symbolic connection to the pyramid's own purpose. Euler's number governs processes of transformation and ascent, much like the pharaoh's intended spiritual journey from a mortal state to an eternal, divine one. The Grand Gallery, with its soaring, narrowing form, can be seen as a physical representation of this exponential climb toward a higher state of being. The inclusion of E alongside pi and the golden ratio paints a complete picture. It shows the pyramid's designers were not just master geometers, but also proto-mathematicians who understood the fundamental constants that describe the shape of the world, the harmony of nature, and the very mathematics of change itself. This was a civilization speaking the hidden language of the universe, and they built their greatest sermon in stone. Even the passage of our year is measured by this silent stone clock. The length of one side of the pyramid's base is not just a random measurement of 756 feet. If you take that side length expressed in the pyramid's own sacred unit, the royal cubit, you get exactly 365 cubits. This number should immediately stand out. It is the number of days in our solar year. The base perimeter, being 4 times that length, gives you 1,460 cubits, a number that directly corresponds to the number of days in a year multiplied by 4. This relationship is too elegant to be dismissed as chance. The builders designed the very footprint of their monument to count the days, but the ancient Egyptian civil calendar we commonly read about was only 365 days long, a fact that makes this correlation seem almost too perfect. However, their understanding of the true solar year was far more precise. They were acutely aware that the actual year is closer to 365 1/4 days, a fact accounted for by the leap year in our own modern calendar. The pyramid's dimensions appear to encode this more accurate figure as well. If you use a slightly different but equally valid interpretation of the cubit measurement, the perimeter relates to a solar year of 365.242 days, a value astonishingly close to the true tropical year we calculate today. This means the Great Pyramid was not just a static monument, but a dynamic, functioning calendar. Each of its 4 sides represented one season, and its complete perimeter marked the full cycle of the sun. Imagine a priest or an astronomer walking the base of the pyramid, each step a measurement of time, each complete circuit a confirmation that the cosmic order was intact. This was a clock that needed no moving parts, a calendar that could never tear or fade, its message inscribed in the very ground upon which it stood. Why would a tomb require such a precise and permanent record of the solar cycle? The answer seems clear. This was not built for the dead, but for the living, and for the eternal rhythms of the world they sought to understand and honor. We thought we had mapped every corridor and chamber within the Great Pyramid, but the stone itself was hiding its greatest secrets. In 2017, an international team of scientists made a stunning announcement. Using a revolutionary technique called muon radiography, they had peered deep inside the pyramid's core without moving a single stone. Muons are subatomic particles that constantly rain down from the atmosphere, passing through solid matter much like X-rays pass through flesh. By placing sensitive detectors inside known chambers, the researchers could map where these particles passed through easily, indicating empty space and where they were blocked by dense stone. The resulting scans revealed a massive, previously unknown void located directly above the Grand Gallery. This chamber, dubbed the Scan Pyramid's Big Void, is enormous, measuring over 100 feet long, with a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery itself. Its presence, hidden for 45 centuries, shatters our conventional understanding of the pyramid's interior. It is not a small construction gap or a random anomaly. This is a deliberate architectural space, a sealed room whose purpose and contents remain a complete mystery. Why would the builders go to such incredible lengths to construct this cavernous space and then seal it off so perfectly that no external trace of its existence remained? The very fact of its concealment suggests that what lies inside was never meant to be found. Speculation runs wild. Could this void contain the burial chamber of the pyramid's true architect, hidden away with his most sacred knowledge? Might it be a repository, a library of a lost civilization, sealed in a time capsule of stone? Or is it something even more profound, a purely symbolic space designed to complete a complex geometric or harmonic equation that we have only just begun to perceive? This discovery forces a humbling realization. For all our centuries of exploration, we have been merely scratching the surface of a structure that continues to guard its deepest truths. The existence of the void proves that the Great Pyramid's final blueprint is still unknown to us, and that the most important chapters of its story may still be written in the empty, silent spaces we are only now learning how to see. The ground beneath the pyramid holds secrets as profound as the structure itself. Surrounding the base is a platform of black basalt stone, a deliberate choice that stands in stark contrast to the brilliant white Tura limestone that once encased the entire monument. Basalt is a volcanic rock, incredibly dense and known for its unique properties, particularly its ability to become weakly magnetized. This is not a random foundation stone. It is a carefully selected material, and its presence hints at a deeper, more energetic purpose. Modern scientific surveys have confirmed something extraordinary about this site. Precise magnetometer readings reveal significant local anomalies directly around the pyramid. The Earth's magnetic field is not uniform here. It is distorted, suggesting that the ground itself, or perhaps the pyramid's immense mass, is interacting with the planet's magnetic forces in a measurable way. One compelling theory proposes that the builders did not simply choose this location for its stable bedrock or its proximity to the Nile. They may have selected it because it was a unique power spot, a place where the Earth's own magnetic energies were naturally amplified or accessible. The basalt pavement, then, could have acted as a kind of conduit or foundation plate designed to channel this terrestrial energy. Imagine the pyramid not as a silent tomb, but as a resonant structure, its limestone casing and granite interior working in concert with this magnetic basalt base. Could the entire monument have been designed to harness the planet's own invisible forces? This idea transforms the pyramid from a passive monument into an active device, a piece of geo-engineering so advanced that we are only now developing the instruments to detect its faint, lingering signature. The stones themselves seem to whisper that their true function was tied not just to the stars above, but to the living, magnetic heart of the Earth below. The question of construction is the great looming elephant in the room. How could a Bronze Age society, armed with what we believe were copper chisels, stone hammers, and sheer manpower, erect a structure of such impossible precision and scale? The conventional explanation taught for generations involves massive, straight ramps built directly against the pyramid's sides, growing in height as the structure did. Workers would have dragged the multi-ton blocks up these earthen slopes on wooden sleds, but the logistics of this method are staggering. A single straight ramp tall enough to reach the top would have required more material than the pyramid itself, and its construction would have been a project of equal magnitude. Furthermore, where is the evidence? The Giza plateau shows no trace of such a colossal ramp's remains. A more recent theory proposes an internal spiral ramp, a corkscrew of packed earth and timber winding its way up within the pyramid's own shell. This would solve the issue of external material, but it introduces new problems of structural integrity and the feasibility of maneuvering massive blocks around tight corners deep inside a rising, enclosed space. Then there are the more speculative ideas, the ones that hint at a lost technology. Could the builders have possessed a method to soften or even liquefy stone, allowing them to cast the blocks in place like a modern geopolymer? This would explain the impossibly thin, precise joints between the stones, but it remains a highly controversial idea with little direct evidence. Perhaps the answer lies in sound, in using resonant frequencies to negate the weight of the blocks, making them almost effortless to move, a concept that resonates deeply with the acoustic properties we find in the King's Chamber. When we look at the pyramid's perfect alignments, its encoded mathematical constants, and its global scale model, we are forced to ask if the how of its construction is inseparably linked to the why. The standard ramp theories seem almost crude when held up against the structure's sublime intelligence. The methods we traditionally attribute to the ancients feel inadequate to explain the masterpiece they left behind. This suggests that the true secret of its construction may be the very knowledge that is encoded within its dimensions, a sophisticated physics of matter and energy that we have yet to rediscover. The pyramid's greatest hidden code might not be in its measurements, but in the forgotten art of its assembly. These staggering mathematical codes inevitably lead us into the realm of grand speculation. When conventional history struggles to provide a satisfying answer, the human mind naturally reaches for extraordinary possibilities. The most famous of these is the legend of Atlantis, the advanced island civilization described by Plato, said to have vanished beneath the waves in a single day and night. Proponents of this theory argue that the precision and global knowledge embedded in the Great Pyramid are the legacy of this lost culture. They propose that survivors of that cataclysm, possessing a science far beyond our own, traveled to Egypt and imparted their wisdom, guiding the construction of this monolithic repository of knowledge. In this view, the pyramid is not an Egyptian creation in its entirety, but a time capsule from a forgotten age, a message in a bottle from a world that drowned. The theory of extraterrestrial intervention takes this a step further. Here, the pyramid's perfect alignments and impossible construction are seen not as human achievements, but as the work of visitors from another world. Could these beings have provided the blueprints or even the technology to lift these massive stones? The argument often points to the sheer ambition of the project, asking why a society would devote generations to building something so mathematically perfect if it were merely a tomb. For many, the idea of an otherworldly architect is the only explanation that fits the scale of the mystery. Mainstream archaeology, however, examines these theories with a rigorous skepticism. Scholars point out that there is no physical evidence, no tool, no inscription, no shard of pottery that connects the pyramid to a non-human intelligence or a sunken continent. The entire archaeological record at Giza, from workers' villages to quarry marks, is profoundly and undeniably Egyptian. The development of pyramid building itself shows a clear evolution from the simpler step pyramid at Saqqara to the refined geometry at Giza. This was a human learning curve, not a sudden gift from the stars or from a sunken land. The mainstream view is that these speculative theories, while captivating, ultimately do a disservice to the ancient Egyptians. They rob a truly brilliant and innovative civilization of the credit for its own greatest masterpiece. So where does that leave us? Perhaps the truth lies not in choosing one extreme over the other, but in asking a more fundamental question. What if the real mystery is not who built the pyramid, but the full extent of the knowledge that a truly advanced human civilization was capable of achieving 4,500 years ago? The stones do not whisper the name Atlantis, nor do they speak of silver ships from the cosmos. They resonate with the quiet, humbling power of human genius, a force that we may still not fully comprehend. Mainstream Egyptology offers a grounded, if less romantic, counterpoint to these grand theories. The central argument from academia is one of context and methodology. Scholars point out that when you analyze a structure as vast and data-rich as the Great Pyramid, you are working with thousands of potential measurements. If you search through enough of these numbers, you are statistically bound to find some that appear to match significant modern constants purely by chance. This psychological phenomenon is known as apophenia, the human tendency to perceive meaningful patterns within random data. We see faces in clouds and hear hidden messages in recorded music played backward. In the same way, we might be connecting mathematical dots that the original builders never intended to place. A key point of contention is the use of modern units. The meter and the inch as standardized measurements did not exist in the ancient world. When we convert the pyramid's dimensions, originally built using the royal cubit, into these modern units, and then find the speed of light or the Earth's circumference, skeptics argue we are engaging in a form of numerical cherry-picking. We are essentially translating an ancient text into a modern language, and then being surprised when we find words we recognize. If the builders truly intended to encode the meter, why is there no hieroglyphic or archaeological evidence for its use? Why would they bury a unit of measurement that would have no relevance for thousands of years? Furthermore, Egyptologists stress the importance of looking at the pyramid not as an isolated mystery, but as the pinnacle of a clear evolutionary process. The development from the step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara to the bent pyramid at Dosha, and finally to the smooth-sided pyramids at Giza, shows a clear human trial and error process in mastering large-scale stone construction. The archaeological evidence on the ground is overwhelming. We have the workers' villages, the bakeries that fed them, the copper tools they used, the quarry marks that name the gangs, and the ramp systems that, while not the colossal straight ramps of popular imagination, show how blocks were moved incrementally. This entire body of evidence paints a picture of a highly organized, brilliantly resourceful, but thoroughly human society. They were masterful engineers, not recipients of lost technology or extraterrestrial blueprints. From this perspective, the mathematical correlations are a beautiful, but ultimately coincidental, testament to their intuitive grasp of geometry and their obsessive drive for architectural perfection, not a deliberate code for the ages. The real wonder, they would argue, is not that aliens built the pyramids, but that humans did. So we stand before a mountain of evidence, a convergence of numbers and alignments that stretches the limits of probability. We have a structure that encodes pi and phi, models the Earth's dimensions in perfect scale, aligns with the cardinal directions and ancient pole stars, and houses a chamber built with a mathematical theorem 2 millennia ahead of its time. Its location intersects the planet's longest landmasses and may even whisper the speed of light in its latitude. The collective weight of these facts presents us with a stark and unavoidable choice. Either we are witnessing the most spectacular and prolonged series of coincidences ever to manifest in stone, a fluke of such magnitude that it defies all statistical sense, or we are looking at a deliberate, multi-layered message from the past. There is no comfortable middle ground. If it is all coincidence, then we must rewrite our understanding of chance itself. But if it is a message, then we are forced to ask the most profound question of all. What could possibly be so important, so vital to convey across 45 centuries, that it required building the most precisely engineered structure the world would see for thousands of years. This was not a message carved on a wall, easily erased by time or sand. This was a message woven into the very angles and dimensions of a mountain of stone, a message designed to survive the fall of empires and the forgetting of languages. It suggests the builders were not just working for their own time, but for a future they could scarcely imagine, a future that is now our present. They left behind not a monument to a single king, but a permanent question mark etched into the landscape of human history, challenging every generation that discovers it to look deeper and to wonder what we have forgotten. The sheer volume of evidence is overwhelming when you step back and see it as a whole. We are not looking at one or two curious numbers. We are looking at a perfect storm of mathematical and astronomical precision, a convergence of pi, phi, and the Pythagorean theorem, all framed by a structure that mirrors the Earth itself on a precise scale. Its placement aligns with ancient stars and the very center of the world's landmasses, while its interior hums with acoustic and energetic properties we are only beginning to measure. The odds of all these elements occurring together by random chance are so infinitesimally small that they border on the impossible. This forces a monumental shift in our perspective on ancient human history. It suggests that a civilization flourishing over 4,000 years ago possessed a unified body of knowledge, a sacred geometry that intertwined mathematics, astronomy, and geodesy into a single, profound science. Their capability was not merely about moving multi-ton stones, but about encoding the fundamental constants of the universe into a permanent physical form. This was not the work of primitive tomb builders. It was the work of master cosmologists, engineers who saw the entire world and the cosmos above as a single, interconnected system, and who built their greatest testament to that understanding in limestone and granite. So we are left with one final, haunting question that echoes down through the ages. Was the Great Pyramid a tomb for a king or a library in stone for all of humanity? A silent, indestructible repository of knowledge meant to survive the collapse of ages, waiting for a future generation to finally learn how to read its language. What do you believe lies at the heart of this ancient mystery? Share your own theories in the comments below, and subscribe to join us as we continue to explore the greatest enigmas of our past.